because all these people are like 10 years younger than him. Right. And they don't know what the hell's going on. And they're all stoned out of their minds. Not to overplay that, but they're all like high as hell. And this weird guy talking about the magus and looking in the crystals and seeing your old dead self in the stars of the inside the jewel. And they're like, dude, like Keith Richards, like, no fucking way. You know? So that's probably what we're talking about.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
Mr. Crowley. Damn, bow, bow. What's up, everybody? It's one fucking hour time. Of course, the show where we talk about one movie for one fucking hour. I am Evan Husney, and we are joined. It's a very special episode. It's a big birthday episode, but it's not this man's birthday, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. Big T. What's going on, Tom? Tom Fitzgerald.
Hey, it's great to do another B-Day episode. Fan favorite episodes, you know.
Here we go. This is it.
Round 2 for 2023.
That's right. And without further ado, let's introduce the big birthday boy. To my right, we got Mr. Marcus Herring. Happy birthday, Marcus. What's going on?
Thank you. I'm going to try not to gush too hard here, but I feel really honored tonight.
Go crazy. It's your birthday.
Yeah. It's your birthday.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me pick a movie, you guys. That's like, that's the,
well,
that's
you know,
once a year, Marcus gets a pick, so that's not true. Because he was in charge, the lead charge for After Hours, which we just did recently. So
that is true.
He's got 2 on the board so far.
Yeah.
No, Marcus, I picked a few others, right? than that, but no,
maybe count them on a hand.
You know,
we
can't. There's some big personalities in the room, you know. So like, I have to defer sometimes.
Fucking Evan guy.
This asshole. All right. Well, we should explain for the good people, just in case you're not familiar, the birthday episode, sort of high concept here at one fucking hour. It basically means that when it's your goddamn
very complicated.
Birthday, it is.
We really need to break it down.
Well, when it's your goddamn birthday, you get to pick a movie with no feedback, no pushback from the others. It's full, indulgence fest for the birthday boy, and we kind of go along with. Sometimes they're perverse choices, like Marcus did Star Wars 77 last year, or even more perversity from Tom earlier this year when he did BJ Lang Presents, which we did live in a studio.
Sorry. We're still getting letters about that.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. we are. I got to up my game, I think, for this year, but that's not until the fall, so we'll get that. That's
whatever
not,
you
but
want.
It's not my birthday. I'm gonna go sick though on you boys. I'm gonna go something really truly demented. Yeah, watch out. Yeah, something from my childhood, which will really, I don't think any of you guys were near. Okay, but it's not me. It's Marcus time. It's Marcus's. Yeah, exactly, something like that. It's Big Marcus's birthday, which means we are doing 1 fucking hour on Kenneth Anger's Lucifer Rising.
Yeah.
Big boy. But also, another first for us, Marcus. This is also the first time we have ever done a film that is shorter than the length of the show.
Right.
That was great.
Cool.
I got to watch it twice,
Yeah.
Yes.
It was almost too short,
Yes.
So
28 minutes.
We're talking about for an hour about 27 minutes.
Yeah.
So that is a little deceptive because and this has been on my mind. This title's actually been popping around for a while with us. But I will say there's the film and it's 27 minutes of film, but the backstory is one of the backstories of all backstories. And sometimes I was a little resistant when we first started doing the podcast. It's like, I don't want this to be like 90%, backstory explanation and then like a couple opinions. So at first I was like, that thing is inherently, Lucifer Rising as a pick, is inherently just backstory, like boop, 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 back up the truck of backstory. And I'm like, let's do it. And especially because it's, your birthday pick, but it's just like, this is backstory time. So,
well, not only is it short, I mean, there's not a lot of acting in it, and there's not a lot of dialogue. So,
exactly.
Right.
So the whole thing is living almost if equally or even more so, like in the story of how it got to exist. And it's amazing.
Yeah,
Someone could make a documentary about the making
I love you guys, but I got to step in as the ref here because it sounds like you're getting ahead of the clock a little. So let's.
I'm out.
Hey, I got to ref this, but as you all know, we've recently reached 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. And you know what that means? We've talked about it before, but we are going to embark on our first ever 1 fucking hour live stream right here on our YouTube channel. More details on that at the end of the show, so stick around. We're going to give you the date, the time, all the particulars for that, so hang on till the end of that. And I hear there's going to be a big announcement we're going to be unveiling during the live show, guys. So you're going to want to be there for that.
You know what? Right. I might even tune in. That sounds fun.
You better fucking be there. But all right, without further ado, here we are. We're here for Marcus's big birthday, episode 65, 1 fucking hour on Kenneth Anger's Lucifer Rising. All right, I'm going to get that clock ready and just about ready to kick it off to you, Marcus. Here we go. The clock is live. All right, Marcus, obviously, since it's your big birthday, I think we should give the people a little backstory just on what is Lucifer Rising, and can you freestyle that for us on your birthday?
Sure. Yeah. So Lucifer Rising is Kenneth Anger's 1966 to 1980 film. Right. It's sort of his Aleister Crowley fan fiction, but it's really just a beautiful art film. It's a short film. And it has to do with Crowley's magic and
who's Aleister Crowley?
Aleister Crowley, or we're going to get into that, I guess. But Aleister Crowley, yeah, he was a writer, a occultist. He's probably one of the most famous occultist of all time, I guess, or at least the 20th century. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a book called Thelema. He had a magic religion called Thelema, and he wrote a book called not Practical Magic, but it's something kind of like that. I can't remember the name of it, but he's been someone who's carried the occult interest from with the time when he was operating in the 1910s. He's always been sort of a figurehead that people have referenced to bring the occult into the 1940s and the 1950s, the 1960s. People always sort of had this obsession with him as an individual philosopher, occultist. And he basically kind of took all these different elements of religion, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, all kinds of different religions from
Rosicrucianism,
old paganism, and kind of combined it into a religion that was sort of, I think it was an attempt to approximate the pagan religion that had been lost in Europe once the Romans came through and Christianized everybody. All those Celts and stuff.
Shout out to the previous Virgin Spring episode we did, the Bergman film.
Yes. Sort of the Celtic religions and stuff were lost. The European pagan religions were lost, and I think people in the 19th century were going back trying to figure out where those witchcraft early Gnostic religions went, and they kind of approximated it by piecing together pieces of religion. So I think that's basically what Crowley did. But
the movie,
so this movie is basically kind of takes an element of Crowley's philosophy and puts it visually on screen, almost like a filmed painting or a series of paintings, and it's just a really beautiful art film.
Yeah. Very psychedelic, trippy, awesome, really cool, inspiring film. And the man, of course, let's just go around quickly and just touch on, maybe we'll start with Tom and then we'll bounce back to Marcus. But Tom, what's your sort of origin story or background with Kenneth Anger, Lucifer Rising, just for the folks at home?
Yeah. Well, he's one of those key figures. If you get into all this crazy movie stuff, he automatically pops up as a major influence. I mean, Scorpio Rising, that's my favorite of his, and it's really amazing. I mean, a lot of people say that it's the birth, right then, 1963, of the music video form, and I understand that, and that's a good thing. It's a positive, compliment to him. But also, Martin Scorsese says that the fusion of pop music and montage used in Scorpio Rising, Scorsese and many other people, after the film came out, were totally blown away by that, and they never seen anything like it. And to this day, it really holds up as an example of, and we'll get into this more, but of a new way of filmmaking, a new way even within experimental art films. You know, in my opinion.
Right.
So it's very groundbreaking. So that really grabbed my attention. And specifically, the thing is, I don't know if I've ever seen his films in a theater, but like in the 80s at video stores, in the late 80s when I started really hitting them up, there was Mystic Fire Video. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
anyway, so all of his films came out on Mystic Fire Video, and like
awesome.
those are very iconic. The box art's very iconic. So I always, it was beautiful because you could just go to the artier kind of video store, and you just would see all these films, and so I got very well versed in them. And yeah, I mean, I'm just a huge fan, and again, I'll talk later about his work. Because sometimes I think his mythology. It overshadows his technique, because I think he's a really brilliant craftsman.
I agree
with editing and montage, composition. So I'm just a fan like a million other people.
Yeah. Well, same here. I mean, just real quick, I remember working at a video store in the early 2000s, and we had one of those Mystic Fire tapes, I believe, of Lucifer Rising. And it had, I think it was like $100 or something. And it was the most I'd ever paid for a tape, ever.
Oh, you bought it?
I bought it. It was long out of print. It hadn't come out on DVD yet. And I was like this kind of, burgeoning filmmaker trying to make my own stuff. And it really, truly inspired me. And it was like this conversion where I was getting into like 70s prog, and I'm getting into this. And it was just like, this was my shit at the time. It's like really one of the most prog rock movies ever made. And I just fell in love with it. And so my first ever like short film, which maybe I'll cut to a few frames of right here, I made around the same time, probably 1920, and around when I made it. And I made it, and it was like taking pages out of this movie, like just ripping it off, basically.
That's great.
And trying to make a visual
videotape
on VHS. I made it on VHS because I was trying to mimic the look of what Lucifer Rising looked like on VHS.
The Mystic Fire video look.
Yes, I was. I was going for Mystic Fire, and then just real fast. Like I had made the film, it's no dialogue, it's music, just like surreal imagery, same thing as Lucifer Rising. It played one screening, okay? It played one screening, and people were so fucking bored and upset by it.
I didn't know what you were going to say, by the way. Because you paused, it was like,
blown
people
away.
Were so fucking 2, 3,
amazed.
like blown away, and you were like bored.
Yeah, no,
That
so
was
bored.
amazing.
And some, this is true. People were there who could verify this. One guy was so mad at the movie, he screamed out loud, "Get this Pink Floyd shit off the screen," which to me now is a major compliment.
It's a huge compliment.
Yeah,
I got to see this. What is it? Was it like like 2.5 hours long?
it was about 27 minutes.
Okay, but it felt like perfect.
Yeah, it was a perfect
All right.
for a reason. But
Marcus's relationship with the film.
It's not my birthday.
Yeah, so when I was trying to pick a birthday episode, I always try to pick something that's meaningful to me in some way. That's why Star Wars was big to me as a kid, and really this film is just a way for me sideways to work in like my second favorite band of all time, Led Zeppelin. So it's really just a Led Zeppelin episode for me, but that is where it all started for me. Was with I read when I was 14 years old. I read Hammer of the Gods, the Led Zeppelin unauthorized biography.
I did too around that same time. Yeah,
You did,
That's the,
yeah.
Baby Shark biography, right?
Yes.
Yep. The shark one. If you don't read it when you're 14, you probably won't. But
Yeah.
So they talk a few times about Kenneth Anger, and they talk about Hollywood Babylon. They make a connection between the Fatty Arbuckle and the shark incident. And so I was really intrigued by that. Of course, I bought Hollywood Babylon as a kid from a used bookstore. And then it talked about this film Lucifer Rising that Jimmy Page was supposed to do the soundtrack for. And it got into the drama, and it got into Kenneth Anger, talking shit about Jimmy Page. And I was like, wait, this guy's name's Kenneth Anger?
I know, right?
He's got balls enough to stand up and talk shit about Jimmy Page. Who is this guy? And then it being supposedly a satanic movie, or talking about Lucifer, just as my teenage brain, who was I was a child of the Satanic Panic era. You're always on the lookout for devil worshippers, and it's really scary. as a kid. So that was still in my brain. And I thought about this movie in my head. It was like this really scary satanic thing that if you got into it, it would like steal your brain basically, and that you would go down that path, like, so that's what this movie was in my mind.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Help me out here. Like, I had heard that Kenneth announced that he was putting a hex on Jimmy Page and by extension Led Zeppelin, and then people
they get into that.
So I'd heard that, and just the last thing is, help me out here in the details. But like, I'd heard that then, around the time of the hexing of Led Zeppelin, sure enough, all those bad things happened. There was like the accident, and I think Robert Plant's son passed away, things like that. Help me out there.
Yeah, so supposedly, he put Jimmy Page didn't finish the film. He didn't finish the music. They had a conflict. I think we'll get into it a little bit more later, but he did put a hex on him, a curse. And it was like it was basically like sending mean letters to the Swan Song office. But so people did interpret the bad things that happened to Led Zeppelin. Yeah, Robert Plant got into a car wreck. His he was in a wheelchair when they recorded Presence. Presence was like not a great album, by most of the way, and then
that's the work of a cursed band.
Right. I mean, like the only person who supposedly the only person nothing bad happened to was John Paul Jones, because he wasn't into the whole Satan thing,
And look what happened to John Bonham a few years later.
Yeah, Bonham.
Wow.
But the truth of the matter is the dates don't add up. Like the Robert Plant's accident happened before the curse. So.
Okay.
But just to put the cap on like just the interest level, when I finally saw the films, I was like, obviously my perspective changed on it so much. It's such a beautiful film, and I just got really inspired the same way you did, Evan, by just the filmmaking, the DIY-ness of it. Reminded me of David Lynch. Like Eraserhead or something. That you could. Make a movie with these limited means. Of course he's got rock star friends or whatever, but I just found it all very inspirational.
Yeah, like homegrown psychedelia. It's very it's cool. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I mean, we're gonna expand upon a lot of the things you guys were mentioning. I'm sure this isn't the first hex we're gonna talk about this hour. There's a lot to get into, and I just wanted to say, I think Hammer of the Gods is tied with Star Wars The Bounty Hunter book as maybe one of the first books I ever read. Those two are very linked, to me. So I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But all right. Awesome. So but let's get into Kenneth Anger, because I think we really should spend a big fat chunk on him, because he's the man of the hour in many ways. I mean, you are, Marcus, but Kenneth Anger is the dude who, without this there wouldn't obviously be the movie, but he's such an influential, enigmatic, crazy, weird character in film history, and something. And look,
let's add, he's still with us.
I know.
He's like dangerously close to hitting 3 digits. He's almost 100.
It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I saw him, and it's been actually like 6 years, but I saw him at the old 101 Cafe that's now closed.
Wow.
He was sitting there with a Lucifer jacket, and he was at the counter,
living the gimmick.
Soup, and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I love that. Love that.
At least then he was still active,
Yeah. Well, he's got a long...
doing something right.
Yeah, he's just... I mean, it is amazing when you think about someone who's still with us, who was a child actor appearing in movies in the 30s, which is crazy.
With Mickey Rooney.
I was just going to say... Yeah, I know. Yeah. I was just going to say, alongside Tom's other icon of surrealism, Mickey Rooney. So I mean, so he dates back to that early time of the talkies, in that era of Hollywood. I mean, that's kind of, I'm guessing, where a lot of the interest in that time period, wanting to bury everybody with Hollywood Babylon, that book that he made, very infamously you touched on. But I mean, he kind of lived that world, which is kind of amazing back then in the 30s. Yeah. And then the 40s roll around, and he makes this movie called Fireworks in 1947, which is a groundbreaking movie for several different reasons. I just wanted to give a few minutes on this because it's so important to describing who he is. I mean, first and foremost, it's credited as the first openly gay narrative film ever in the U.S., which is a big milestone. But he's kind of credited with Fireworks, which is this sort of black and white, again, not sync sound. It's music. You know, it's very it's a really cool movie, and he's credited as really kind of helping to create independent filmmaking. Period. You know. Which is really interesting. I mean, in 1941, just a quick little history, you know, backing up the backstory bus here for a second. In 1941, the Society of Independent Motion Picture Producers, which, you know, was Chaplin, Mary Pickford, David O. Selznick, you know, those people who were worried about the growing monopolization of Hollywood and the big studios, they formed this deal. And their big initiative was to try and get lightweight film cameras in the hands, like the same cameras they used to document World War II, in the hands of other filmmakers. You know, less expensive means to make, to make movies. And this movie and Meshes in the Afternoon by Maya Deren, which is another one of the early experimental kind of breakthrough movies that we still talk about today, are the two most well-known films from that era, using those cameras and being supported by this society. So it's just, he's right there at the forefront. Yeah.
And quick shout out to the LA Underground. You know, like New York often takes a lot of the oxygen out of the room.
True.
And deservedly so in a lot of ways, as being, you know, on the cutting edge of 20th century experimental avant-garde works. But boy, as far as film, I mean, of course, there's Hollywood in the shadow, but like LA Underground film is very strong. And it's not just those two guys, you know.
No.
So it's really a fascinating period, and you know, and Fireworks is well worth seeking out, you know, and it has it's a very much a Kenneth Anger film. It's because he was like 21 or something, and he was fully realized as an artist, is what I'm trying to say, you know.
Yeah, really, really crazy. And so then that would kind of establish him, and then he basically, you know, would go on the rest of his career on making these short form sort of, you know, experimental films. But he kind of characterizes most of his work as that he's always made silent films with music, which is another interesting kind of connection to that old Hollywood silent era thing that, you know, he would be fascinated with. Yeah, would he be fascinated with Hollywood Babylon, but also kind of be a part of as a child actor. So it is kind of this weird thing where, like, he's kind of appropriating his experiences with old Hollywood, but kind of reinterpreting it in this like experimental freak out kind of way, you know, which is cool. Yes. I think that's cool.
Totally. It's not about the spoken word so much. The original version of like what filmmaking is here and in Europe. You know what I mean? Like a lot of artists weren't even thinking of film as having like, you know, like dialogue from a play, that kind of thing, you know? So you're right. He's coming from that sort of primordial version of like filmmaking.
Pure. He had the pure cinema.
I read that. I heard him say that, you know, he went after Fireworks, he went, like, Cocteau like invited him to go to Paris, you know, and like and there he discovered, like, he was, I forget, through some French organization, was like exposed to like the Méliès films, and so he was really inspired by that DIY kind of like you could make a film in a small set, you know, you could make a movie there, because he said that when he grew up, you know, coming out of that big Hollywood thing, that's what he always wanted to do, is make these films on a big studio stage, you know. But then when he went to Paris, he discovered the Méliès and was like, oh, you could make movies that way. And that really he felt really inspired by that. And you could totally, I mean, it feels very true with everything you're talking about, like the silent films and just his approach to filmmaking and stuff. It like when I read that, like a bell went off, you know, like, oh, he's starting to make a little bit more sense to me now where he's coming from.
Yeah. And,
well, one thing I wanted to mention too, Evan, if we're going through like sort of the story of Kenneth Anger, I just wanted to plant a seed in this where we're going to talk about how this film, Marcus alluded to it, that this film's, you know, date, Lucifer Rising, it's like 1966 to 1980. Huh? And what I'm trying to say is, like, he had a huge problem in the 50s. And so he did Fireworks, and there's these enormous time gaps in poor Kenneth's work because, of course, he was doing things that were scandalous aesthetically and, of course, content. But, like, there was supposed to be this really beautiful voodoo film. A film where he depicted, like, imagine Kenneth Anger in the 50s, I think it was Color, made a film about the voodoo rituals of Haiti.
Yep.
And it was confiscated by, like, Kodak.
The lab,
it was like lab. It was like burned. So that, like, you know, he lost like 5 years right there. So he was having these kind of problems throughout his whole career. And so in a way, I think he's always felt that he himself has a hex on him and that he is cursed for whatever reason. And I think he's I don't know, he's always coming from this stance of like fighting against almost like unseen cosmic forces to get this done. So in a weird way, it's, I think, a great achievement simply that like Lucifer Rising did cross the finish line, because it looks like it was kind of his most difficult work in a career of having barely gotten through getting any of these like 13-minute films completed. You know what I mean? He had like everything. He didn't just have, and we'll get into this, he didn't just have, you know, like censors, you know, like fighting him and people not exhibiting his stuff, but he had like sick shit fighting him.
Well, I mean, he had the fucking lab. I mean, we should be clear on that. Like the lab processing that voodoo film, you say, is like alleged to have destroyed all of the materials of the film when they saw these like what they deemed to be sacrilegious
there was some
imagery
nudity too.
Yeah, right. And it's like, you know, and that's just like crazy. Like you got to be able to trust your lab, man. But
scary.
Yeah, but Marcus, you also brought up Cocteau real quick, just to you know, connect those dots too. It's like, you know, Rabbit's Moon is another one of his movies. It's kind of worth just as a quick shout out because it's so influential.
Great.
It's very, you know, people say it must have had a huge influence on David Lynch, and you can see it in every frame. But also, you can see Cocteau and like Beauty and the Beast. You can see that kind of influence creeping in with Rabbit's Moon. And it's also noteworthy because with Scorpio Rising, which we'll talk about here on the road to Lucifer Rising, is kind of the thing, you know, Rabbit's Moon and Scorpio Rising are the two things that are really credited as, you know, using the modern pop music, which you never saw, modern pop music as a soundtrack to a movie. And that's the thing you alluded to in terms of what really inspired like Scorsese with Mean Streets. I mean, how much do we take advantage of, like the fact of like, you know, I was just watching the fucking Nike biopic on whatever Amazon today, and it's like every second is another pop song. You know,
like
you take
music, like music supervision as a soundtrack, is a score. Yeah, no, like, you know, some old school like record dealer guy that I knew in the '90s. He helped me have some awareness. He said, you know what, buddy, before Easy Rider, it really wasn't common that a soundtrack would be comprised of just a bunch of fucking songs. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, and so, and that's even later, you know, Easy Rider is, by the way, also influenced by Scorpio Rising, very much so.
Totally.
You know, shout out to Dennis Hopper, LA Underground World guy too. And so, anyway, just not to get sidetracked in that too much, but just like, there was a before and an after with Scorpio Rising, because it's almost like people didn't even, no artist even was cognitive to do that. It just wasn't even like considered.
I know.
And it is an interesting thing that's getting very pop art and Andy Warhol, where it's like, you know, considered trash, you know, like My Boyfriend's Back, and that's going to be playing at a haughty kind of French Cinematheque, you know, like it's such trash, you know. So he's an early guy who was doing like trash in the art house.
Yeah.
Big shout out to him on that too.
Totally. Yeah. So unless you want to just quickly, we should get into it. Just like I'm looking at the clock as always. But you know, Scorpio Rising, we can just sort of just hit real quick because it is important on the road to, as I mentioned, Lucifer Rising. I mean, one thing he sort of mentioned is that it's like I have this the way his quote of how he describes Scorpio Rising, which I always love, is he calls it. This is what he says of it. It's Brando, bikes, black leather, Christ, chains, and cocaine, a high view of the American cyclist, a machine as totem from toy to terror, Thanatos in chrome and black leather and bursting jeans. Oh, that's tight. That's a synopsis.
Beautiful. That's Kenneth Anger, baby. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Scorpio Rising, just you know, amazing, influential movie. I mean,
and it was a hit. You know, like just to explain that, it was still a short, but it was actually double featured almost always in the Cinema 16 sort of network of you know, like places that played experimental films, not just in New York and LA and San Francisco, but all throughout the country. But it was in a package with Chafed Elbows by everybody's favorite Robert Downey Sr. So that was always, that would fill it out and be like a feature length program, because Chafed Elbows is like an hour or something. So Scorpio Rising was a really big hit, you know, and it was easily his big moment. And so, just to help along like the slow journey towards you know, getting to the film we're talking about today, but like so he was on top of the world with Scorpio Rising. And then he got like a grant from like the Ford Foundation or Getty or something like that. He got, because he was the man for a second, and he was the guy to bet on in underground film. And something, he blew the money, and he couldn't get. Oh well, he tried to do Custom Car Commandos.
Right.
Which there's only like 1 minute of that. And that was supposed to be a film, which sounds like it would be my favorite film, of Big Daddy Roth customized guys in this like kind of gay, like cloud heaven fantasy world of like metal flake colors and tangerine, custom hot rods and stuff like that. And
hot
he just, everything.
And
right, and everything went wrong, and he lost all the money. It all was blown, and he had 1 minute to show for it with Custom Car Commandos. So there's more problems here for him in the mid '60s, and then it gets even worse when he checks out San Francisco in the summer of love, and he thinks, now it's my place, now it's my time. Let's make a movie, right? So, guys, what's next?
Well, Marcus, where do you want to start in terms of? Because there's a lot to get into here in terms of the backstory of Lucifer Rising, because it's pretty fascinating. I mean, in terms of go ahead, take it away. Where do you think we should?
Sure. I think we could start sequentially there. I mean, because it's going to get into the music, and that's some of the big parts of it for me. But I think, so like Tom said, he rented a mansion in San Francisco called, what was it called? It's like a famous sort of like mansion
the Russian embassy.
The Russian embassy, right?
I've been there, by the way. I just remembered that, like right now. I went to a party there. It's amazing.
Wow.
It overlooks the Panhandle Park. It's amazing. Wow. Yeah, the Russian embassy.
We have an awesome picture of it with Bobby Beausoleil on the steps there. So I guess he set up there and started making he started setting out to find his Lucifer, right? So he had been a Crowleyite since 1950, I guess, which is pretty funny to think of someone that was into the occult in 1950. And I guess he, just not to go away from San Francisco, but just for a second, he did travel to Crowley's like abbey called like Thelema Abbey, and restore some erotic paintings that were like on the walls that had been covered up by Mussolini's police guard.
Wow.
They had been painted over white, and he had taken off the white paint and revealed these like erotic drawings. And he got some attention for that too. Like Kinsey, the big like sex researcher, who had gone over there to view the drawings afterwards and stuff. Wow. Anyway, so he had this fascination with Crowley, and I think he wanted to. He teased sort of doing like a biopic on Crowley at one point that didn't ever materialize, right? Oh, wow. And then I think he, when he landed in San Francisco, he wanted to do something that was like that featured the teenage movement of the moment. They get into the hippies, and I think that was part of his early pitch, was like the now generation, show what they're up to, But I think he always wanted to weave in his Crowley stuff. So he went to a concert, right? Went to a show and saw Bobby Beausoleil had a band called like what was it called? The
Oz, right?
Oz, yeah. And it was some sort of event with like Bobby was like backing up some topless dancers, I guess, with his band. And he was being lascivious, like licking the dancers or something. And
side note, very attractive young man. Like Bobby Beausoleil was like movie star handsome.
Yeah, and we should also just say, just for the people at home, that Bobby Beausoleil would go on to actually he did the finished score for Lucifer Rising, but he's a key player here years before the movie was
it's just beginning with
just
Double
beginning.
B.
Yeah, Double B.
He's also a very infamous character.
We'll get into that too.
Yeah, we'll get into that too. I mean, this is my understanding, is that they sort of met, following this concert, and they had this very bizarre relationship where, obviously Kenneth Anger, a gay man, Bobby Beausoleil, very young, 19, if that, maybe even at the time.
20 tops, yeah.
Tops, and they lived together, and they sort of had this relationship that a lot of people were like, what's going on there between these two guys, and they kind of were, and a lot of people I say that Anger was like in love with him, but that they never really made it to home plate on that one. But
I think Bobby was pretty clearly straight.
Yes,
with no ambiguity.
That's what I'm trying
so
to
he was
say.
just like, not going to happen.
Right, but they started to clash. Like they were close, they were friends, they lived together, but they would get into these like crazy like arguments, and they would clash constantly. And it sort of led to, I mean, I don't know where this lies in the chronology of the story, but but what I've been told, if we're talking about another hex here, that Bobby Beausoleil, they like got into some huge fight, and there was film footage that Anger had started to film with Bobby, right?
Well, wait, let's be clear. The first reels of what it was called Lucifer Rising in 1966-67, those first reels are what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
that Bobby
he managed to cast Bobby by in the film, but he convinced him to be a part of it. Bobby agreed to do it as long as he would be able to do the soundtrack, because he had this band, and he thought like, well, he knew that Kenneth was like a thing, and I think he thought it was a way to like launch his music, So he agreed to play the part as long as he got to do the soundtrack for the movie.
Right, which hey, that's a good. That's a great.
But so what's the problem
tactic.
started?
So the problem started. They basically had issues. They were clashing, and as the story goes, a lot of conflicting reports on this. But basically, those first reels that Tom was mentioning, Bobby had stolen. Right, he had stolen the reels, and he had started to drive down to Los Angeles. And at this time, Kenneth Anger is very upset at Bobby. And this is when he decides to put a hex on Bobby. And we should say that, Kenneth Anger is known to tell tall tales and mythologize a lot of stuff.
Well, how about this? That's not his real name. Let's start there. His real name is like Kenneth Angler or something like that.
Right.
So, but he's a myth. He understands the power of self-mythos.
But let me land the plane. So what he does is he puts the hex on Bobby, and that's apparently right around the time when Bobby's car breaks down in front
he meets someone
of Spawn Ranch and meets a little old group there called the Manson Family. And that's where he wanders into, and you can, guess what sort of unraveled from there. But, sadly, Bobby Beausoleil got wound up in that whole scene. And he was the first, I think, right? He's the first of any of the guys to have been sort of manipulated into committing homicide. And Bobby Beausoleil stabbed, what's his name? Tom, you're the...
Glenn Hinman or something like
Gary
that?
Hinman.
Gary Hinman. He was a music teacher and a friend of the family. And he, it all gets very street level and cash level. And he probably just was trying to rob Hinman, and it all went wrong. And I think they were trying to torture him to give up all his money, and whoops, he died. So there
that's
goes
the deal.
Another Kenneth Anger curse, maybe. Right?
There is, yeah. And real quick, just to give Double B's side of the story, he denies he ever stole the film in the first place. But Anger basically mythologized it even further to say that Bobby had either destroyed the prints or buried them in the desert somewhere. But
there's part of the folklore is that folklore, along with a severed head here and there somewhere still in Death Valley, are two film reels in Death Valley.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Undiscovered, and someone's going to discover that thing in 30 years. But again,
please.
You're right. I actually thought it was a realer story. Then I didn't really hear that.
Well, Anger.
I thought it did happen.
Bobby's version of it sounds plausible, and he's saying that Kenneth is basically had some loans out on the film, and he wasted the money, and that he made up the story so that it was stolen, or he just started saying that it was stolen to kind of
raise more money. Yeah. No, to raise more money. I thought for what it would be. Right. Yeah, which
he's the victim now. Help the victim.
Allegedly.
This kid, he came in my life. This fucking Manson Family guy. He stole my shit. We got to get some more money. Wow. So anyway, Bobby out of the picture, and now enter in new composer Marcus. I think this is you're in here, right? Should we go here now?
Are we gonna go here? Yeah, yeah. So I just Yeah, so Kenneth Anger announced when the film was lost, he got really demoralized, and he decided to kind of to drum up some more press for himself. He announced his death as a filmmaker and placed a big ad in the paper saying Kenneth Anger, 1947 to 1967 or whatever, right. And he left. And he did a big show in New York, and then he left. And I think he did the same thing in New York, put a big ad in the paper with his death, and then as a filmmaker, and then he fled to Swing in London, and where he met up with Robert Fraser, who is the famous gallery owner. Who one of the wild things about Kenneth Anger, just how many famous, cool people's lives that he touched. It's like
unreal.
It's unreal.
Like to be clear, it's the Indica Gallery,
right,
which at exactly that time was exhibiting Yoko Ono.
Wow.
Around that exact time that John Lennon meets Yoko Ono. So, because Indica Gallery was the place to go. If there was an opening, you would see Keith Richards, you would see John and Paul, and you would see Marianne Faithful, and then you would also see Kenneth Anger, who, you know what, I bet half the reason he knew all these people was because he's Kenneth Anger, and he's probably very commanding, and he probably had a good rap. He probably could talk, and because all these people are like 10 years younger than him. Right, and they don't know what the hell's going on, and they're all stoned out of their minds. Not to overplay that, but they're all like high as hell. And this weird guy talking about the magus and looking in the crystals and seeing your old dead self in the stars of the inside the jewel. And they're like, dude, like Keith Richards, like, no fucking way, So that's probably what we're talking about. That's always been my theory.
Also,
that makes sense.
They're also all. You're right. You're 100% right. They're all on drugs. Like the It Crowd. All those people. They're on drugs. But also, there wasn't much like stoner shit to like watch then. And so he probably made a lot of the shit that it paired really well with whatever they were taking.
Absolutely.
Right.
Especially, side note is like in the embers of Lucifer Rising's first existence. It became Invocation of My Demon Brother, which I love. That
too.
Sucker's sick. And that's all like loose ends and little pieces of stuff that were going to, the intention was to wind up in Lucifer Rising version 1. The soundtrack is, of course, obviously, an incredibly abusive, ugly, psychotic, hardcore, like Moog drone by Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones.
I know. Amazing.
Yeah, check that shit out, guys. If you haven't seen it, it's on YouTube.
I actually realized I had a little more notes on the Bobby Beausoleil thing. Just real quick, then we'll get back to Jimmy Page, the entrance of that. I forgot that Bobby 19, Kenneth 40, they lived together. Okay, many reports is that they were in a relationship, but a lot of people said they weren't. Kenneth Anger was jealous when he would bring women back to the house, and everyone described that Kenneth Anger had an impressionable hold on Bobby Beausoleil, which is kind of weird because that means maybe he was primed for somebody like Charlie Manson. Kind of weird in that way. But people said he had
very
a hold on.
young minds. Lots of drugs.
Yes,
it
exactly.
Happens. It happens.
It does.
Right. And people were really open to like new experiences and new ways of living at that time.
Right.
Even
making a psychotic witchcraft mistake is better than being, drafted and going to Vietnam and like getting married and working at Safeway. So, it was all part of the fun.
Yeah. And so, but Kenneth Anger had some sort of psychological breakdown at the time. Then they had a huge falling out and he stole the reels and left. So just to clear that up. Okay, now we're back. Lucifer Rising. Maybe just really quickly before you get into the Zeppelin of it all and the Jimmy Page, let's just say what he was trying to do with the film, because we should kind of describe what he was trying to do with the movie. My interpretation is with the Crowley of it all. This was kind of his big Crowley fan fiction, as you said at the top of the show. But his sort of he took the Crowley definition of Lucifer, which is not the Christian devil. It's not that black and white. According to Crowley, Lucifer is the god of beauty and light. and that's what his name actually means. Lucifer's the name means I bring the light. I am the light bearer. And so, in this idea was he wanted to create this movie that sort of fused like the Egyptian iconography, where you have, you basically have Lucifer being heralded by Osiris, the Egyptian god of the dead, and Isis, the god of life. And, this whole movie, like with Crowley, is really just kind of that pagan celebration of all things carnal in life, and that's what he's trying to make with this, which is really, this is, Kenneth's magnum opus. So that's what he's trying to make with this.
It is.
I think to add to that, I think it's like, the characters that we see, Lucifer, Lilith, shout out to Lilith Fair, I think that they are, he's saying that basically, or Crowley was saying basically that these characters that appear in other religions, that appear in Judaism or Christianity, like Lucifer, that they were real gods before, but the Christians came along and absorbed them and say like, well, yeah, Lucifer, he is a real god, but he's actually the devil, And so he's trying to get to like a pre-Christian era where there were all these different gods and it was all part of like the same religion or whatever, Isis and Lucifer and stuff. So yeah, that's part of the symbolism that we're seeing play out as these gods, these human representations of real world gods, Isis, Osiris, Lilith, Lucifer, and then a human being like a magician, an adept magician who's like trying to conjure Lucifer, and we see the ritual play out.
Kenneth originally wanted played by Mick Jagger, by the way.
Right. Yeah, this is some prog rock shit here for sure. But let's get into the Jimmy Page of it all, because it is a big reason why we're talking about this tonight.
Yeah, well, the funny thing I think is that, like Tom said, is like that, Kenneth seems like this weird sort of occultist guy who's probably blowing the minds of like Mick and Keith and stuff. But Jimmy Page separately was super into Aleister Crowley.
Yeah,
and I guess it was sort of in the zeitgeist of the time. Like there was an autobiography of Crowley that was released in '69. There were people that were kind of carrying on his story, the Manley, the Philosophical Research Society guy from here in LA, sort of transmuting Crowley's message, from the 19-teens, 1920s through the 40s, through the 50s, and then, to Kenneth Anger. But somehow Jimmy Page, I'm not sure what his initial introduction to Crowley was, but he was into him before he met Kenneth Anger, and they actually met at an auction where they were both bidding on Crowley items,
which is
pretty incredible.
Nerd alert!
Yeah,
they started talking and realized that they were both huge, fans.
You can relate to this, Evan. It's like, it's like you buying a comic book and you look up and it's Kenneth Anger wants the same comic book. Let's talk, brother. Sorry.
They were super. Life. Yeah, so I think he basically pitched to him what he was doing, because I think he was already working on it. Like Robert Fraser let Kenneth Anger set up in his apartment, and he started like, shoot your movie here. So he was like, painting the floor, doing all these things, putting up a set, shooting. He was already kind of shooting his work, and then he bumped into Jimmy Page and basically said like, hey, I'm making this movie.
And what year is this?
I don't know if he knew Led Zeppelin or not, but he obviously knew that Jimmy Page was hot shit at that time, and was like, because it's 70. Is this 70 or 71? It is like around like some peak Zeppelin.
Oh wow, Led Zeppelin 4, guys.
Yeah,
album with like a bunch of fucked up cymbals. I mean, it sounds like the kind of guy that Ken wants to talk to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So he basically says like, let's do the soundtrack, and I'll give you 50-50 share of the film, we'll split the profits or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So Jimmy agreed to that. It sounded good to him, and he's a big Crowley person. So away they went. And he started recording music for
did he not buy Crowley's estate, Jimmy Page?
Yeah, he bought. It's called Boleskine House. It's like on Loch Ness. It's Crowley's house on Loch Ness. So he bought that, and then Kenneth went to go stay there. Jimmy Page let him use the editing equipment that they use for Song Remains the Same. So they bought this.
Really?
They bought this editing equipment for Song Remains the Same. They let
and they never used it. But
at that point. Yeah,
right.
used once.
It's a joke about how bad that movie is. Yeah. Go ahead.
It was cursed. Also cursed.
Yeah.
But so yeah, he let him use that editing equipment and stay at his house and stuff like that.
Hey, actually, in Song Remains the Same. It might be wrong here, Marcus. You're the guy, but that incredible moment when Jimmy Page is introduced in the opening of Song Remains the Same, when he turns around, he's playing a hurdy-gurdy or something. He turns around, his fucking eyes are like purple.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Is that the estate?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's killer.
He's like sitting on that rug.
Love that. So then, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard, this was also JP's big heroin period, or that's what at least Kenneth Anger said. And so, like, Homeboy just like did not turn the soundtrack in.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
yeah.
on
So
time.
from like, I think he. So I mean, but before Jimmy Page was on the soundtrack, he was Kenneth was actually using Adam Hart Mother. So this is like the second soundtrack. So he was using like there was supposedly a
Pink
version
Floyd
of
shit
Adam
off the
Hart Mother,
screen.
the Pink Floyd album.
Yeah.
I'm floating around.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was used for a while. Then Jimmy Page recorded about 20 minutes of music, and that was the soundtrack for like about 3 years, I guess, as he was working on this film. So basically, like back then, I think it maybe was a little different thing for filmmakers. You would work on your film, show a rough cut publicly, get funds to complete it, and still. So it's it's a little. Maybe some people maybe still do that now, but I think that for someone like Kenneth Anger, he was more public about it. He was a bit of a celebrity, right? So he could do that.
Maybe help me out here. This is, I think, an important detail. I want my imagination to get this right. But is it not true that there, I guess, still in existence is a rough 16 millimeter reel that has the Page soundtrack, and that is the source of anything you hear of the Jimmy Page soundtrack? It's just pulled from the 16 millimeter that would be shown to, I don't know, at colleges or other filmmakers.
I do have the soundtrack album.
There you go.
Here.
Yeah.
That was like released in '87.
That's awesome.
Finally, but yeah, I think. So Kenneth says that he has a print of it, right?
With
he
Jimmy's
says he has a print
soundtrack.
of it still.
Is
Yeah,
that
with
what
the
you're
Jimmy Page soundtrack.
Okay.
And there is a print floating around because at the theater back in the day, wasn't that going to be screened, like the Jimmy Page version of the print?
Maybe.
So I remember this story from like the Cine Family days of like that movie, a version of Lucifer Rising was going to be shown with the Jimmy Page soundtrack, but then isn't that when
you're right.
someone showed up and seized the print or something like that, or like I don't know, was it
cease and desist lawyer stuff, and it didn't happen from Jimmy Page? Yeah.
Oh wow.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the print is floating around, I guess, or there is a version of it out there. So
maybe a few. But anyway, thank you for that, because that is the only way that we're hearing, even to this day, right? The Page soundtrack is sourced from the 16. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. There's like bootlegs and everything, but. Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty drony. It's like that's like the vibe of it, right? Like it's a pretty drone heavy score.
Yeah. There's like synth things are run through an ARP, and there's like it's just kind of like a tambura going like doom doom, like a rhythmic thing, and just like it's super drony. He only did. It was supposed to be one of the fucked up things about Lucifer Rising. Was supposed to be a feature. It was supposed to be a 90-minute movie. It's supposed to be 93 minutes actually.
Holy shit!
Some sacred numerology for Crowley, and that's what Kenneth Anger was going around telling everyone. This is going to be my feature film. Jimmy Page only gave him 20 minutes of music. But Jimmy Page decided the story is like, well, hey, he wasn't finished. He wanted to score to the movie, And
90 minutes.
Kenneth Anger saying like, well, he didn't give me enough music, but he also has said like, well, Jimmy Page was just too whacked out at the time.
Which is very believable.
They talk about that in Hammer of the Gods too, is basically saying that he was, that's why Presence is so rough. Part of the reason Presence is so rough. that's why Jimmy isn't like really at the forefront of all of on Into the Outdoor. Like there's almost no memorable guitar lines.
He didn't do any writing hardly.
He's just so whacked out.
But actually, just really tiny little thing is, did any thread from the soundtrack wind up anywhere? Is it like In the Evening, the Zeppelin song?
Yeah. It does sound like that. It does sound like In the Evening, or even maybe that awesome dirgy part of Carousel Alhambra or something. It does sound like those, like not those ideas. I think were fed into that, that droney kind of thing. But it's not these actual recordings. So.
Okay, and then let's
the Light, like the opening of In the Light, maybe.
That's what I was saying.
Well, that was maybe
Before,
that was like 75, right? So it could be, I guess, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, so and we should, just because we're jumping around a lot of years here, we should circle back to Double B. But it's like they met, I guess, in the early 70s. But just in terms of the process of Kenneth Anger working on this movie, I'm guessing it didn't really. It wasn't until 76 when Jimmy Page is sitting down to actually record music, or is it all over the place?
I think it's earlier than that, because like what I read from this awesome book that I have, that I will recommend this book called Bringer of Light. Anyone that wants to dig in deeper,
I need that.
It's just some awesome pictures in there, and a lot of the anecdotes that I'm talking about I got from this book. So maybe we could link to that or something. But
sure, in the description.
He says that they used it actually for about 3 years. That this was that was the soundtrack. So I think he might have recorded it right away, but then didn't finish it. So
Yeah.
Got it.
Oh, gotcha. Well,
fascinating.
So Jimmy Page doesn't turn in the score, and now Kenneth Anger's got to look elsewhere. And now at this point, Bobby Beausoleil is in prison. He still is right now as we're talking, which is crazy, for killing Hinman. And so I guess they start a communication. How does it start where Bobby does the score then?
So the story that Jimmy Page got bounced off the project, Kenneth Anger was very mad at Jimmy Page. Like they had a big breakup at the Boleskine house fight with Jimmy Page's wife, Scarlett Page's mom or whatever. Not his wife, but his like girlfriend or whatever.
To be a fly.
They got
on
in
the
a big
wall.
argument. Jimmy Page had Kenneth like ejected from the property, and then Kenneth started this media campaign where he's like writing all kinds of nasty things in the press, putting the curse on him. It's all very public. There's a story in Variety that Jimmy Page is fired from the Lucifer Rising film, and then Bobby Beausoleil is sitting in Tracy Correctional Facility on he doesn't have the death. He escaped the death penalty because they ruled that as unconstitutional in California. He's just in life in prison. He reads the Variety article saying that Jimmy Page has been ejected from the soundtrack, and he thinks, maybe I should give Kenneth Anger a call. So he called Kenneth Anger and convinced him. He said, like, what if I could convince the warden to let me record the soundtrack to this movie while I'm still in prison?
Wow.
and he's like PR dream right there, right? Like that's a PR hook of a lifetime, right? I mean, to be able to like record
for which person?
Well, both.
Think about it.
But I know, but to be able to like say that the soundtrack of this movie, is recorded in prison is just like incredible. I mean, that is one of the craziest parts
by a
about
Manson murderer.
Yeah, insane.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Okay. Well, no, Led Zeppelin says no. Ring, Manson family member. Like, it's insane.
Right. No,
that doesn't happen.
Insane.
Things like this don't happen. It's only in the 70s.
This would make a cool movie, actually. And it's like the idea of like them like loading the gear into prison. Obviously, spoiler alert, he gets the warden to agree to let him record this in prison.
No, let him to construct basically a prog rock band in the yard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's synthesizer banks and like amps and stuff. There's footage of this stuff.
He was building the equipment, like he had some decks and stuff, but he would go to the shop and build like effects units to run the signal processing through. And
wow. There's like work detail on like pedal creation. Like that's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, Tracy, if you got to go to prison, I think Tracy Correctional Institute or Correctional sounds like a pretty good place.
In the mid 70s.
Okay.
After Watergate. And that was a very liberal time.
Totally.
Different era. Yeah.
Incredible.
So just because the clock's dying here, he records this epic soundtrack. It's totally awesome. very listenable. I love it. You know, I was jamming out to it a lot. It's definitely kind of Sabbathy. It gets a little, prog rocky, a lot of synthesizer.
It's so good.
Yeah, a lot of different feels there. It kind of makes
it
the
took
movie
him 5 years. 5 years.
Wow. So that's hence why it's coming out in like when it's finally finished in like 80 or whatever.
80, right.
Right. Which is
So this movie that started like in swinging London or whatever.
No, it started in San Francisco.
right. The Jefferson Airplane. It started like the White Rabbit era of Jefferson Airplane, and it ends up coming out after punk already happened, after John Lennon,
Tarkus's fourth album.
John Lennon's already been dead. John Lennon's already been killed. Like MTV's about to
the germs
start.
broke up.
That's crazy, dude. That is so crazy.
It's insane.
And then it really didn't. It had a whole other life on Mystic Fire Video or whatever the fuck.
Mystic Fire Video.
But let's with the last Jesus Christ 6 minutes.
We didn't do this movie justice after all. It's funny.
Well, it's backstory. It's backstory hell. I mean, you have to get it in. It's just
backstory
fascinating.
Bertha, man.
The jacket was designed by Kenneth Anger, but also by this woman Judith Hahn. I forget her name. She was part of her and her husband did the Sgt. Pepper album cover.
I didn't know that.
Wow. So like they put up they were the designers on that. So she also did the jacket, and she says it's all her.
All the wardrobe's dope
all him,
in Lucifer. Yeah,
totally.
She said that Kenneth Anger basically said, "I want Lucifer to have a baseball jacket," which I do think is pretty genius.
That is awesome. That is pretty cool.
It's a great look. It's one of the greatest like wardrobe outfits ever. Yeah. That jacket. And by the way, when I saw him a few years ago, did I mention that here?
Yes, you did.
He was wearing that jacket.
Yeah, you said
the
that.
stoop.
But yeah, so we'll just because the clock's dying, we should talk to one other just quick figure that's in this movie. We'll just talk about the movie for a minute. But like the guy who plays Osiris, I think that's the male lead, is Donald Cammell. Yeah. Shout out. He's another person from the London scene who collaborated with Nicholas Roeg, and really progressive sort of filmmaker at the time
with
too.
Mick Jagger
on Performance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and fascinating character. I'm sure we'll get into him much more in the future on future episodes of the show. But another person that touches this film. But I guess just to talk about the movie, I mean, again, it's sort of it is an abstract sort of tone poem here at the end of the day, but it is amazing. There's great set pieces throughout the whole thing. I mean, you have like, I love all the fucking wide angle stuff, with like the wizard running around in the circle with the shit painted on the floor. Really, when the film starts to get the prog rock jam session kicks in. I don't know, guys. Fucking elephant stepping on a snake, I love the tracking shot that's just going up and down, and we're seeing Lucifer come out with all these different makeups, like all of a entirely red face, a face that's like half black, half white, or like stripes. It actually gets scary to me at that part. Once the ritual gets going, once the magician who's actually using Aleister Crowley's like glass wand, after he actually conjures Lucifer into the space, it starts to get pretty scary to me. You do see Jimmy Page is in the movie. See Marianne Faithful's in the movie. She's one of the major characters playing Lilith. Right. Shot at this amazing German rock formation that was used in like pagan rituals, and also used by the Nazis for like Hitler Youth. I don't think he didn't go there because that's why, but it was this sort of sacred pagan spot that the Nazis did all that occult shit too, right? They love that shit too. Yeah, Marcus.
If we're talking about the film, I just want to do a micro shout out to his montage work in general. I just rewatched it again today, and the thing that I was reminded of was, I guess his last three films, his 60s, his 70s film, Hear This. One thing that I really liked about him was his montage style had kind of a punk rock attitude towards the elements of his footage. And there's actually a lot of footage in all these three films, especially in throughout Lucifer Rising, that he didn't shoot. Like he would just grab science footage over here. He'd grab an old silent movie over here. He'd grab some garbage here. Scorpio Rising, same thing. He'd grab a really terrible like B movie of Jesus over here. He'd grab this over here. He'd grab newsreel footage over there. And he had this great kind of punk rock collage style, which you guys know me. I personally of course, love that. And like, what I loved about that was it had a real kind of, again, punk rock's attitude where shit is not matching at all. Like, you know, it's a beautiful composed shot that he did, you know, like a day before, but then it's like next, and then he cuts right to like a picture of a tiger from like a nature film. And he's got his own bizarre internal sort of math understanding of how this succession of images that he constructs is pulling you into having your own sort of visual ritual and being like transfixed by this strange succession of images
about it.
Where there's no words in sight. It's just visual, strange depictions. And he has this punk style, though, where he's just grabbing whatever image is interesting and important for him.
Yeah.
And montage, awesome.
Yeah, the filmmaking's so great. I mean, I think like it's, to me, all the Crowley shit I didn't even know till after I was a big fan of this movie. You know what I mean? Like I just appreciate it on an aesthetic level for the filmmaking. You know, there's just other levels if you're willing to go down that occult path. But you know, I love that. I love the effects work in this film. There's this guy Wally Vevers that did the awesome titles. The titles are just like the greatest,
the best.
It's very 1980
Lucifer Rising in flames.
It looks like Unarius. Actually, I was thinking Unarius a lot. That religious cult, everybody. Look them up. Very visual.
It looks like the beginning.
This guy did the effects guy did. He worked on 2001 and like Superman and like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. You know, he was like a legit effects guy that he got to come in and do all of the like little.
It looks like the beginning of like a
insane.
It looks like the beginning of a 1980 concert film. That title.
Exactly.
You know
I know
saying?
exactly what you mean. Yeah,
You know what I
absolutely.
mean? Like on tape. Yeah. Marcus, take us home.
got a-
Anything you want to get in before we're done here?
Well, I just got a little
Birthday
wistful
boy.
thinking about like what happened to this sort of filmmaker, what happened to this sort of film, you know? And I think like in 81, MTV started, and I think people that would make this sort of silent art film would just go down that path and become a music video director. And if you had something that was more obtuse and didn't have any pop culture grounding, you would go into the art world, you know? And I feel like that the world is missing that sort of Kenneth Anger type filmmaker now that can be someone that makes art films that have a pop, you know.
Oh man, it's probably hard to make that to be authentic now, you know, with the Xerox principle, but I hear you. All right, boom. That was it. 1 fucking hour on Lucifer Rising for Marcus's big birthday. I mean, man, there was a lot left we could have gone into.
That was the backstory birthday bash. That's what I'm calling it.
It's like, it's so weird. The shortest movie, and it's by far not enough time to get into it.
I know.
That backstory.
Yeah, that backstory.
Maybe he's got backstory, right? I'm so stupid. I'm sorry.
Oh my god. I want my baby back story back. All right, so yeah, it's tough. But I had a blast. I mean, you know, look, there's so many cool. When you mentioned this movie, so many cool ass shit, so many awesome intersections. It's just such a huge.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
hey,
it's such a monster.
I would like to say for further reading, I would say the book to get is Bill Landis's book called Anger. The late Bill Landis, he did Sleazoid Express. The classic.
I love that book.
Like grunge movie in the 42nd Street zine, Sleazoid. Bill Landis knew and befriended, Kenneth Anger like in the 80s kind of.
Yeah.
And so it's a great intimate portrait. I'm looking for my copy. I can't find it. But like Anger by Bill Landis, if anyone wants to further look into all this. That's the book, I would say.
Great. And Marcus, show that other book one more time, just so we can properly plug it here.
Yeah, what is that?
Well, I saw it on
thick.
I don't know. I think somebody we know knows this author or something, and it was released, and they had like anyway, there's an Instagram account maybe we'll link to that.
There is, you can order it there. Yeah, Bringer of Light, the making of Kenneth Anger's Lucifer Rising. Yeah, pretty sweet shit. Might as well plug the record. That's the Jimmy Page bootleg there.
Yeah. Is that in circulation in some way? If someone wanted to get this?
This was I think there are other versions of it, but the originally came out in 87 was like the first press of this.
That's cool. Is that shit sealed or what?
Yeah, it looks like it.
No.
Oh, it's got the cellophane.
It's very close. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm bad though. I open up my sealed records.
No, that's cool.
That's all good,
it's
man.
Pretty cherry looking. Yeah. Nice one.
Yeah, nice. So, all right. Well, happy birthday, Marcus. Great pick,
man,
guys.
How
Fun
was
to
it?
rap about.
Huh?
That was great.
It's better than I imagined. So thank you guys.
I'll start thinking about next year.
Yeah, man. You gotta. Yeah, cook up something else for us.
I got a list of rejects. Yeah, already.
Oh, good. All right. So real quick, as we teased at the top of the show, we were gonna sort of announce what's next for one fucking hour, and we gotta, we mentioned we were gonna do a fucking live show. So our first ever one fucking hour live stream is gonna happen. We got it. Here we go. Okay, the date and time. Mark it in your calendars. Put it in your notes app. It is going to be Sunday, May 21st. At 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. The three of us are going to go live on this YouTube channel. So if you're listening to us on Spotify or anywhere else, you're going to have to get onto the YouTubes. We're doing our first live stream, and it's going to be very excited. We're going to throw back to an old favorite format that everyone here loves. It's tried and true. We're going to do one fucking hour on movies we hate part 2 for our first ever live stream. So definitely make sure you're subscribed and ring the bell here on YouTube to be notified when we are going to be going live. Again,
the chat's going to be popping off. We're going to be talking to you guys in the chat, and getting your input and stuff. So.
The live cage match.
Absolutely.
Three guys walk in.
Yep. Yeah.
3 guys walk out.
Yeah, exactly. But we want to hear from you. Hop in the chat. We're going to be talking about movies you guys hate, movies we hate. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. So May 21st,
it's
Sunday.
still just an hour, right? Mm-hmm. So we still have the constriction,
Yep, that's right.
But
Sunday, May 21st, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Be there, be square. And like I said earlier, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment on any of our posts on social media or on a YouTube channel. And guess what, guys? While we were recording, we had a very epic comment roll in on one of our Instagram posts, which I'd like to read. It was posted approximately...
Like during this episode?
It was posted 7 minutes ago. And I just want to read this from Kenny Among Us. Commented, totally just spotted Tom riding his bike in Silver Lake while walking my friend's dog. And I'm sure you had your I'm sure you had your docs. I'm sure you had your headphones on, but he said, "Hey, one fucking hour. Hey, Tom." No reply, LOL. Yo, Tom, no love for the OHF fans? What a moment.
Okay. Hold on. A, that's terrifying. B, when I go out, I don't do the world. I do the headphones. So if you're listening, my apologies. There's small, weird little black headphones, and so they disappear in my ear canal. So I'm gone. I can't hear anything. And also, 2 things. I was in a super hurry because my chores were taking forever. Because I had to get to the show, baby, and do the So it was like doubly fucked up. It was like I'm really late, and this guy's like going, ugh, and I'm like, I don't know, like I gotta go.
I'm just busting your balls. It's
so
a funny comment. It's a real comment.
But it's too funny.
No, but like that is my explanation for homie. Yeah. So sorry about that. In a different circumstance, it'd be like, hey, what's up?
Yeah. Well, one fucking hour Tom. There he is. So anyway,
did we say that on our live show that we're going to announce
Yes. Thank you very much, Marcus. And another reason to tune into the live program on Sunday the 21st, May 21st, is that we're going to unveil a new big announcement. We're going to have a huge announcement about some crazy shit that's coming up for the rest of the year.
We're announcing an announcement right now.
We're announcing that there's going to be a big announcement on the live stream you won't want to miss for... Guys, this is the biggest thing we've ever embarked on.
This is huge.
Huge. This is huge news.
It's a big thing.
You
don't want to miss that.
You don't want to miss that. And so, guys, and thanks so much for hanging with us for this fucking hour, this episode, Marcus's big birthday. We're going to get back to it hard after the...
When's the next birthday ep, though?
The next birthday ep will be me in September. Right. So we got some time.
Okay. So it's metered out every few months, I guess. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's nice.
Every like a season. 3 of the seasons are happening.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Forward to that.
So that's nice, and we'll do that. We'll get to that. But of course, before we leave you, we cannot leave you without your moment of Zen. And all right, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we will see you for the live show. Very excited. We'll see you all live and in person on the YouTubes.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks
all right,
for tuning
everybody.
in.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Ah. Oh, where's my? Hold on.
Did the decline in his guitar playing in 1976 have anything to do with his failure to deliver your soundtrack?
No. The reason why he didn't deliver the soundtrack was that he had a problem with heroin, and that was interfering with his work. And I tried to help him get over it because it was really interfering with his life. Because he's a very wonderful person, and I think eventually, I hope he has got over it now.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
That was wicked, man.